Okay, the live on Facebook does not seem to be working, as occasionally it doesn't, so we will dive right into it. So l'chaim, we already made a bracha on our wine. If you haven't, please join us in saying a little l'chaim on some wine, or some if you're drinking beer or any other liquid besides the wine, you should be making shahakol, not a hagafen. And there we go. We can see you. Perfect. All right, and we are ready to get started. So l'chaim to health primarily around the world, to all those in need of a speedy recovery. We always begin our class by mentioning, if anybody has someone who would like to mention, now is the time. I will mention David ben Shoshana, a first cousin of my wife, who's been in the hospital. Thank God he's off of the ventilator, but he still needs a little. He could use our davening, and hopefully, God willing, soon he will come home speedily to his family. And the same, obviously, for all those in New York or around the world that are New York. We just have a lot of them that are in need of a speedy recovery. May Hashem give them a full healing in all parts of their body, and let us say Amen. This week's Torah portion, we read two Torah portions. We read two parshiyot, two parshas, and the reason for that is because we are in the middle of a non-leap year. In other words, we only had 1 month of Adar, and so there are many parshas which for that year would be needed. Both of them would be needed, and for this year, only one of them is needed. For this year, we put them together in order to move along, because we don't need each one for every single week. We have 4 less weeks this year than it's possible to have in a leap year. In any event, so we read two parshas, Acharei-Kedoshim, and the first parsha opens up by saying, Acharei mot shnei bnei Aaron. It was after the passing of the 2 sons of Aaron, who famously wanted to connect to Hashem on a very, very deep level. Or in other words, they got drunk. That's a little bit of a convergence between the literal and the spiritual meaning, but that's a topic for another time. In any event, they passed away. Fire went up their nostrils, and they passed on from this world. And in this parsha, 2 weeks later, we learn of the words which Hashem tells to Moshe Rabbeinu and to Aaron to warn them, or to warn them, to learn from the experiences of Nadav and Avihu. They did not realize that you should not go into the Holy Temple drunk, that you shouldn't go all the way into the Holy of Holies. There was much to be learned from them, and in this week's Torah portion, we start off by doing that. As the rest of the parsha goes on, the parsha of Acharei, we learn about all of the laws of Yom Kippur, which is why actually the reading of the Torah for Yom Kippur is an excerpt from this week's Torah portion. We also learn about forbidden relations. We spend a lot of time about that, who a person is allowed to marry, sleep with, etc., and who not. There's again a prohibition against idolatry. There's mitzvah of tzedakah. This is all the way at the end of Parshat Kedoshim. We are once again warned about the mitzvah of Shema, keeping Shema. And then towards the end of Parshat Kedoshim comes one of the most famous mitzvot of the Torah, which is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that you should love your fellow as yourself. And Rabbi Akiva says this is a great principle in the Torah. In other words, he calls it a cardinal principle in the Torah, the main thing, and everything else surrounds it, as we know the famous story with Hillel. In any event, that's kind of a quick overview of the parsha. So what are we going to talk about today? What I'd like to talk about today is as follows. Let me paint for you an example. It's Super Bowl Sunday, all right? And you're munching on some pretzels. You're deeply engrossed in the game, right? Is this a good thing, or is this a bad thing? Now, let me just qualify this. I'm not talking about that your children are beating each other up in the other room and your wife needs your help and you're not doing that because you're watching sports. That's not what I'm talking about. Simply the act that you're doing. Is that a good act or a bad act? Is that a positive thing or a negative thing? We got any takers here? That's what I want to talk about today. But you can unmute yourselves. I see some people want to.
Kirk here, vote.
Adrian,
please. Please repeat the premise one more time.
The premise is you're doing something which is just, seems neutral. You're watching the Super Bowl. You're eating some pretzels. Is this a positive thing or a negative thing? On Facebook, I posted, it's humor. You hear a good joke. You tell a good joke. Nobody gets affected by this. Is this a positive thing or a negative thing?
All down to context.
All down to context. Okay. Shimon, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it says in Pirkei Avot that there are things that are allowed, there are things that are not allowed. And it depends if the things that are allowed but are in study of the Torah, if they reinforce the study of the Torah, if they reinforce chesed, if they reinforce kindness and our love of Hashem and his children and human beings and the creation, then
a good thing.
That means anything that reinforces that.
Absolutely. So you're saying, so if I'm watching the Super Bowl and I'm eating pretzels, but that's somehow, maybe I need a mental break and that's going to help me study Torah later, whatever it is, you're saying, so then that's a good thing. Very valid point, 100%. So let's dive right into it. In this week's Torah portion, we read, and we'll take it right here on text 1a. Let me zoom in here. David, you want to read for us? In this week's Torah portion, we read a very interesting, this is the beginning of the second portion, the second parsha, the opening words. Go ahead, David. And
I gotta find it. I gotta find it.
Oh, no worries. I didn't realize you were on the phone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Let us know if we should move on to someone else. All right, Yosef Ilan, you want to read for us? Go ahead.
Okay.
Text 1a.
Okay. And God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the entire congregation of the children of Israel, and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy."
The opening words of the second parsha of this week, Kedoshim, is Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani. You should be holy because I am holy. Hashem says to us, he commands us as the Jewish people, listen up, you gotta be holy. Question for the crowd. What does it mean to be holy? Anybody? Any input? Shlomo, what does it mean to be holy?
Oh, no.
Anybody? Come on.
To follow the mitzvot.
Oh, to follow the mitzvahs. Okay. Here's a question I have to you. Who was that? Adrian? Who was that?
David.
David. So David, let me ask you a question. If to be holy means to follow the mitzvahs, so inherently Hashem is giving us a command to follow the other commands? There's a law to follow the other law, a law to keep the law. This is like me telling you, can you go and grab me a drink of water? Then I say, David, can you listen to what I said and get a drink of water? It's almost like there's a never-ending cycle. The Talmud set uses the expression sometimes, ein ladavar sof. How many times can you if you're the one commanding, obviously you're expecting the other person to listen. If they're not going to listen, telling them to listen is not going to help. You just told them to do something. You're going to tell them to do it and then tell them that they got to do it. Be holy. First you tell them to do the Torah mitzvahs. Then you tell them, be holy and do the Torah mitzvahs. A little redundant, no? What do you think? Anybody else? Comment what you got.
The Kedoshim Tihiyu is Pirushim in Harayos.
Oh, 1 second. So you're already diving into Rashi, 100%. But I'm asking you just your understanding.
But that's the lashon of Kadosh, really. It means to be sanctified or really removed.
Separated.
Separate, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so you know what? Why don't you read for us, Colin? Go for it. Rashi. So whenever we have a question, what does something mean? The Torah tells us to be holy, right? So Rashi immediately clarifies for us. Go for it. You shall be holy.
Okay.
Can you see it? Text 1b.
Yeah. You shall be holy. Separate yourselves from sexual immorality and from sin. For wherever one finds a barrier against sexual immorality, one finds holiness. For example, they, the Kohanim, shall not take in marriage a woman who is a prostitute or one who is profane. I, God, who sanctifies you, am holy. Also, he shall not profane his offspring. I am God who sanctifies him. Also, they shall be holy. They shall not take in marriage a woman who is a prostitute or one who is profane.
So for those of you that are not, don't know the entire Tanakh off the top of your head, all of those alsos, right, the references which Rashi is making to different verses from throughout, he's referencing them whenever we find someone being praised for morality, for sexual morality, or someone being warned against sexual immorality, we always find this word kadosh, that they are holy. And he brings 3 examples. They, the Kohanim, right? So each one of these also are 3 different verses from throughout Tanakh where there is sexual immorality mentioned, or making sure to be moral from a sexual perspective. And and the word holy is mentioned. So that's Rashi's take. Rashi says very simply, what does it mean to be holy? To be holy because Hashem is holy, is to be holy in our relationships. Okay? So that's Rashi. That's the simple, practical explanation. We always go to Rashi for that. However, the Ramban, or Nachmanides, who we've spoken about in the past, we've definitely brought him down in this class in the past, he is a commentary on the Torah. He has a commentary on the Torah. He lived, as you can see in the sidebar here, in the early 1200s. And the Ramban, or otherwise known as Nachmanides, right? Not to be confused with Maimonides or Rambam. And this is the era when they were called based on their parents. I believe Idez is in Spanish, I guess. The son of. So Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon, or Rabbeinu Moshe, the son of Maimon, was called Maimonides. And this is Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. So he's called Nachmanides. And he has a commentary on the Torah, and he takes this a little further. He says, look, yes, there's a literal translation. Literal translation is to make sure that we are proper in our relationships. However, there is also a deeper message here. Shlomo, you want to read for us? Okay.
Sure. You
the
can
Torah
hear me?
prescribed.
Okay. You can hear me? Okay.
Yep, we hear you perfectly.
The Torah prescribes certain sexual practices and forbade certain foods, but permitted relations with one's wife and the consumption of meat and wine. The pleasure seeker may thus find license, and it disappeared.
The page disappeared, Rabbi.
I'm sorry. Not sure what happened there. Is that back?
No,
No.
we have a white line through the center.
Okay, so let me stop the share. I'm not sure what I did there.
Hold on just a second.
Is that back?
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
now
back.
it's back.
Perfect. All right.
What did you do?
I don't know what I did. I wish I knew.
Oh.
All righty. Okay, let me put on my
Sorry. So
glasses.
the pleasure seeker.
Oh, no, I can see it. Okay, so where were we? We're
The
talking
pleasure
about
seeker.
the pleasure seeker may thus find license to be lecherous with his wife, to become a drunk, and to consume an abundance of meat, or speak profanely, things which are not directly forbidden by the Torah. One might thus excuse his abominable behavior because it technically falls within the boundaries of the Torah. Therefore, this verse, "You shall be holy," is mentioned after the Torah has detailed all the activities that are to be curtailed entirely, for it presents us with a general and comprehensive command that we are to be separated from overindulgence.
Very interesting. So the Ramban says this is the one place in the Torah. His words are "Kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach," which means make yourself holy. In fact, we're going to see that in a moment. Just again from the Rabbeinu Bechaya ben Asher, he says, "Make yourself holy with the mundane." He says, "Look, what you need to do, you need to do. The mitzvahs to put on tefillin every day, to keep kosher, to keep Shabbos, whatever, to not steal, right? What you cannot do, you cannot do, right? What you're forbidden from doing according to the Torah, you're forbidden from doing. Don't steal, don't murder, don't desecrate Shabbos, don't eat non-kosher, etc. All these, that's the positive mitzvahs and the negative mitzvahs. But in between, he says, if we were just to follow the rules of the Torah, and many people very often accuse, particularly the more religious people are, that they'll be accused of this. Yes, you follow the Torah and the mitzvahs, but you're not a mensch. You're not a mensch. What does it mean to be a mensch? Go a little bit beyond the Torah. What's about everything else? So because you're not sleeping with anyone else's wife, that means you can't be improper with your own wife? What about the things that you do with your own wife? Can that not be sometimes beyond the pale of what the Torah wants? But the Torah doesn't forbid anything. The Torah says, if it's your wife, it's your wife. Food is the same way. So if someone spends his entire life gluttonously eating, right? Acting in a hedonist way, I think is the word that's usually used, right? Eating and drinking and he turns himself over for another pleasure, right? Turns his whole life over for another pleasure. So this is allowed according to the Torah. Says the Ramban, it's technically allowed. However, this week's Torah portion teaches us, Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani. You should be holy, for I am holy. Why? The Torah tells us, Kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach. Separate yourself. Kalman was mentioning that another translation of the word kadosh, in addition to holy, is also to separate ourselves, right? That's why those that are holy are separate from us, right? They're removed from us. They're above us. right? So similarly, Kaddish Atzma, separate yourself from some of the things that you're allowed to do. Not just because a certain pleasure is allowed according to the Torah, do we have to indulge in it? Now, this is a very, very tricky statement to make. But before we dissect it, let's see one of his peers. I don't mean historically. He actually lived in the 1200s. But Rabbeinu Bechaye, text 3, is another commentary on the Torah. His full name was Rabbeinu Bechaye ben Asher, not to be confused, by the way, with the Rabbeinu Bechaye Ibn Pakuda, who we're learning on Monday nights, who has the book on faith and trust in God called Chovas HaLevavos, or Duties of the Heart. This is a very different, although they lived very similar in time, maybe about 50, 80 years off. This is a very different rabbi. He has a commentary on the Torah, and he directly connects this to the word holy. Okay? What does he say? Alan, you want to read for us?
Yeah.
He says, where it says
a wise person?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. A wise person ought to break and overcome his desires. Breaking one's desire ought to be something cherished. Thus, King Solomon said, desire becomes pleasure to the soul, such as a desire overcome is something sweet to the wise. Should I keep on going?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Now, from where do we derive that one who follows the desires of the heart transgresses the entire Torah? King Solomon revealed this idea to us when he said, he who is separated seeks lust. In all sound wisdom, he is exposed. In other words, one who chases pleasure finds himself separated. He will be left alone, for all will avoid him due to his wicked ways. Therefore, the Torah has commanded us to refrain from desires, even permissible ones. As the rabbis of blessed memory said, sanctify yourself by refraining from that which is forbidden to you. Anyone who refrains from the fulfillment of pleasure is called holy.
So the Rabbeinu Bechaye quotes Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest of all men, and Shlomo HaMelech is talking about nothing more, nothing less than slavery to our impulses, right? Sometimes we find that we are enslaved to our desires, right? At its very extreme, it's called addiction. But even way before addiction, there could be an issue where someone, his desires are in control of him, right? If we're sitting or drinking a glass of wine, and that's helping me to clear my head or to help me get involved in the lesson, that's great. But if I'm drinking wine because I need the substance, or even way before the level of addiction or dependability, right? If I'm drinking the wine because somehow I enjoy the wine so much, or I enjoy whatever it is, doesn't even have to be a substance. It could be food, it could be an experience, it could be to see something. But I'm so involved in it that it's come to take over my life. Says Shlomo HaMelech, a wise person stops it in its tracks. He stops it way before you get to that stage where it's in control of you. A wise person, says Shlomo HaMelech, ought to break and overcome his desires, right? In other words, it should be an exercise that he practices all the time. Among Hasidim, this is called iskafia. They will often say to themselves, I want to take a drink from this wine too much. Let me put it down just for one more minute, like that. I can show the self-control or the mastery that I have over my impulses, as opposed to my impulses having a mastery over me. This is, says Rabbeinu Bechaye, what this week's Torah portion is referring to when it says, Kedoshim tiyu ki kadoshani. You should be holy, for I am holy. In a word, he quotes the sages, Kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach. Sanctify yourself by refraining from that which is forbidden to you. So, that is a typo. The actual translation would be, sanctify yourself by refraining, right here, where you see sanctify yourself by refraining from that which is forbidden to you. It should be sanctify yourself by refraining from that which is allowed or that which is permissible to you. That's the actual translation. Kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach. Okay, now, neither of these rabbis, they both stopped short, you'll notice, just shy, of calling this a mitzvah. Because a mitzvah is one of the 613 commandments. You don't just randomly throw out that term and say, oh, this is a mitzvah, even though in colloquial terms it has become that way. Oh, such a mitzvah for you to smile at me. It's not a mitzvah to smile at someone else, right? There's 613 mitzvahs, no more, no less. It might be a detail in a mitzvah to be happy and etc. But so these rabbis, they tell us it's a great thing to go beyond the letter of the law, because that will stop you, that will hold you back from getting to that point where you'll actually transgress the law. Okay, great. But there are actually those counters of the mitzvahs, similar to the Rambam Maimonides, the most famous counter of the mitzvahs. There are those who count the mitzvahs who actually include this mitzvah as part of the 613. Let's see one here. Text 4. Where are we holding here? Alan just read for us. So, Julie, you want to read for us? Text 4 and 5.
Yes. We are commanded to refrain even from the permissible, to not feverishly pursue desires and excessive sensuality like chickens, as the verse states, you shall be holy.
Anybody notice that word commanded? Let's see what he's talking about, okay? So Rabbi Elazar ben Moshe Askiri is, he is quoting, or he's following the train of thought of the Chinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch, as you can read on the side over there, is a book from the 13th century that we're not entirely 100% sure who the author was. He was a contemporary of the Rambam, Maimonides, again, possibly off by 50 to 100 years. But most importantly, he did the same thing as the Rambam did, as Maimonides did, which is count the mitzvahs. Not every time that the Torah says you should do this, you shouldn't do this. Sometimes, not always is that a mitzvah. Sometimes that's for that generation specifically to do it. Sometimes it's just God telling a particular person or a group of people to do that. And it's not meant to be a commandment forever, a mitzvah forever. So while I'd say 95% of the mitzvahs are agreed by everyone, there's that 5%, which some say this is a mitzvah, some say this isn't a mitzvah, etc. So the chinuch is one of those counters, right? And he explicitly mentions this as one of the mitzvahs. Go ahead, Julie, finish off for us, text 5.
One who follows the lead of the eyes and chases after worldly desires by engaging excessively in worldly pleasures for no higher purpose, such as keeping healthy so as to better serve God, but only for self-indulgence. Such a person continuously transgresses this commandment.
So they do not. Thank you, Julie. They do not quote here the verse that he bases it off, but the verse that he bases it off is actually quite famous. It's from the Shema. Not from the beginning, not where we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Hear O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Not even from the next paragraph, which speaks of our love for God. But all the way at the end, in the paragraph called Vayomer, we say a statement which is, V'lo sasuru acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. You should not stray after your eyes and after your hearts. Says the Chinuch. He actually uses the same language here. He says, one who follows the lead of his eyes and chases after worldly desires. Someone who allows his eyes to lead him in direction. We're not just talking here about, watching or seeing something that is inappropriate. We're also talking about just following, things that look good and enjoyable for no reason in this world. So just a good piece of meat, a good glass of wine, right? All this good food, good drink, having a good time, all of these things. Someone who follows all of these things, says he, is over. He transgresses this commandment of following after his eyes. This is probably best put in, I think they have it here. Text 6. In a statement which was very, very common by Hasidim. Here it's being quoted in the name of Rabbi Mordechai Haradoker, who lived in the 17th century. In any event, Marilyn, you want to read for us?
Okay. The Hasid Rabbi Mordechai Horodoker related, the first aphorism we heard from the Alter Rebbe when he arrived in Liozna was, what is forbidden, and what is permitted is unnecessary.
Boom. Talk about a mic drop moment. He says everything that's forbidden is obviously forbidden. Of course I'm not going to do it. And everything that's allowed, he says, everything that's permissible is unnecessary. Ooh. Okay, we were getting more and more extreme as we went along. Let me ask.
Looks like the football game's kind of out.
What was that?
Looks like the football game's kind of out.
Looks like that football game is kind of out, right? So this is the question for the class. This is the moment we've arrived at. Does Judaism believe in abstinence? I mean, we know Judaism doesn't believe in celibacy, right? In other religions, the holier you are, the less you engage in sexual relations. Judaism certainly doesn't believe in that. Look at the rabbis if you need any proof, right? And the amount of children that they have. It's usually the exact opposite of the way it is in Christianity. But does Judaism believe in abstinence? Does Judaism believe in whenever you have a desire to do something, saying, no, don't do it. As much as you could engage, the less you can engage the physical world, the better? Is that where we've arrived, Alan?
No.
What say you?
Well, it's a good question. I think that obviously, if everybody needs a break now and then, if like we discussed earlier on, if the break helps further you along in doing pursuits that you need to do.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
What's that?
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Go ahead.
Let's say it doesn't. Let's say it doesn't. And I watch a football game. Heaven should protect me just for watching the football game. Or I eat a good bag of chips or a nice slab of meat just for the sake of the meat, because I enjoy it. Is that so terrible, Alan?
I don't think it is, but to be on a higher level, I guess if you want to reach higher levels, I guess it is. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I disagree.
For me personally, where I'm at, no, I don't believe it would be for a guy like me.
Okay.
But,
Julie, what do you say? What do you think?
I mean, I don't think it's so bad. I mean, maybe it's not unnecessary, but if maybe you had a bad day and maybe you want to do that and it puts you in a better frame of mind.
Again. The bad day, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm sorry for interrupting you again. But everybody automatically goes down that path because we want to say that. But let's say not. Let's say I didn't have a bad day. I'm actually having a great day. I need nothing to motivate me. I don't need a break. I don't need a vacation. I just want to enjoy a football game. Is that so terrible?
I don't think it's terrible.
It's permitted, but it's unnecessary, according to the text.
Unnecessary. So what does unnecessary, Marilyn, mean? If I'm a Jew and I'm trying to be a good Jew, should I avoid it? I should avoid watching football games? I should avoid good meat? Kalman, what do you say?
But I think you should have the perspective of what, that it isn't
This is a
priority.
This is a very valuable.
Your wife may need you in the other room. There might be a fire in the kitchen.
Very interesting. So, this is a very valuable point. Now, this is not. I mean, we're not going to talk much about this in the class, but I like where you're going with this, which is, yes, it could be unnecessary, and you're allowed to do it. Go ahead and do it, but at least maintain the perspective that what you're doing right now is unnecessary. In other words, if, like Julie and Alan and all of us like to go directly, if you need it, if you need that vacation break in order to be able to thrive later, mental health break, then yeah, what you're doing right now is a good and holy thing. You're doing it in order that you should be able to keep going. But however that instance is, however that story plays itself out. But if it's not, so you're saying maintain perspective. Make sure that you know that what you're doing now is unnecessary, like that should anything else come about, you can jump to what's more important. That's interesting, like that it has priority. Hold on just a moment. We're going to take a quick, for those of you that are regulars at the class, you know that every class has a quick Menachem break. It's like a coffee break.
Everyone has the radio or TV
Hi,
on.
Menachem. Hi.
Hey there.
Hi, baby.
Menachem, you need to say
Your
hi.
bedtime now.
Yeah, that's what happens. He's going to take a bath. Say hi, Marilyn.
Hi, Menachem.
Say hi, Julie.
Good to see you.
Hi, Menachem.
Say hi, Kalman. Can you say hi, everybody? Hi, Kalman. He's saying it.
No.
Say hi, Andrea.
He grew a little since I saw him last.
Yes. Say hi.
Rabbi, somebody has a radio or TV on in the background.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try to mute. Yeah, every once in a while I forget to mute everyone, so I'll do that. In any event, so in just a moment he's gonna go to sleep. We'll say goodnight. But for now, that's where I'd love for you all to think about that. Think about. You're going to take a badi? Yeah. Oh, you're not going to sleep. He's going to get a bath. He's not going to sleep. Nobody should say the S word. Don't say it. Okay. So before we start our conversation about whether or not,
yeah, can I make a comment?
Sure. Who's that? Yeah. Shimon?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Now we can. Yes.
You're focusing on whether watching a TV show and eating pretzels is really what you should be doing. But I would say that drawing the analogy is something else that makes you feel good. That's an avera, which is being focused on being right as opposed to being kind, because it may make a person feel a little bit better to be more superior, but the the Pirkei Avot says you have to be very careful when you try to correct somebody. You're supposed to ask them
Absolutely.
About, you know.
Shimon,
so
Shimon, but can I interrupt you for a moment? I specifically did not use that analogy. That analogy, to me at least, is a little bit simpler. I mean, it's not simpler to do, don't get me wrong, it's just as difficult to do, but it's simpler to understand. I know that my ego is a problem. I know that being kind is the right thing to do, and if those two are at odds, then obviously I should try to be kind and not be right. The question is here, one of these things, it's not harming anyone in the world. You'll notice even when I gave the example of a football game and eating pretzels, the analogy was clearly stated that your wife does not need your help. There's no children that need your help. It's not harming anyone. Nothing absolutely negative is coming out of this. That's the question. And in order to, okay, bye-bye, Menachem, say bye-bye, everybody.
We're going to take a budget because we need one.
And so now we're at section 2. And section 2 is going to precisely deal with this point, which is what is good and bad? Okay, so let's talk about good and bad for a moment. Our let's call them colloquial approach to these things is that good is something that makes me feel good. Bad is something that is an abandonment of morals. I've abandoned all my morals. People are being hurt. There's a general lack of direction or something like that, right? In Jewish terms, we would call it doing a mitzvah, not doing a mitzvah, following Hashem, not following Hashem. All right. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya actually takes a very different approach. He never calls bad. I mean, of course, he uses the word bad, but the word that he uses for the source of bad is actually not some evil or terrible or negative. The word he uses is a shell. In Hebrew, this is called khalipa. Khalipa, like a shell or a peel. So imagine a fruit or a nut of some sort that has some sort of protective layer on the outside. And that protective layer can sometimes be mistaken for the real thing. Imagine somebody takes a nut, a pistachio or something, he cracks open the pistachio, and instead of eating the flesh of the nut and throwing out the shell, instead he focuses on the shell and throws out the nut. Says the Alter Rebbe, this is the best analogy for good and evil, for good and bad. Why? Because really, everything in this world comes from Hashem, including bad, including negative. Hashem created everything, right? It would be heresy to say there's something that exists in this world that comes from somewhere else other than Hashem. That is inherently denying the oneness of Hashem. So everything comes from Hashem. But Hashem tells us clearly that there's certain things we're supposed to focus on, and other things we should recognize that is the shell, that has to be discarded. Let's see this analogy in the Alter Rebbe's own words. Adrian, you want to read for us? Text 7.
Let me just grab this here. Is this from the kelipot?
Yes.
Okay.
So kelipot is the Hebrew word for shell.
Okay. The kelipot dim and conceal the divine sparks from every angle so that the divine light is no longer discernible in them, to the extent that they appear to exist independently of Hashem. Thus they are called kelipot, for they are like a peel which wraps and encompasses the fruit contained inside it. In a similar fashion, the kelipot conceal the divine sparks like an almond's shell. The only way to extract the fruit is to break the shell. Likewise, to extract the sparks of holiness from the kelipot that hide them, the kelipot must be broken.
Thank you, Adrian. So I don't want to dwell on this particular element for too long, but what is the purpose of bad or of negative things? Why did Hashem even create negative things, right? So without going down this deep philosophical rabbit hole where we'll sit and spend hours talking about it, the simple answer is as follows. In the Alter Rebbe, even before he talks about negative energies or evil or bad things in this world, he opens up by quoting a verse from Ecclesiastes, from Shlomo HaMelech, where King Solomon says, that God wanted equilibrium in this world. God created everything holy that there is in this world. There is an unholy counterpart. If there is something holy, using wine for Kiddush, then there's something unholy, getting drunk and doing all sorts of terrible things. And everything in this world has a counterpart. That's the purpose why negativity was created in this world. Now, what happens when I do something negative, something that takes its energy from this force we're calling the forces of khalipa, or the forces of this shell, the outer form of the fruit. Essentially what happens is I am choosing to take energy from something that conceals the light of Hashem. You see, inside, right? Remember that analogy with the pistachio? Inside, there's a deep and powerful connection to Hashem just waiting to be tapped into. And I could have chosen to do that. But instead, I got distracted by something that was covering over on it, by something that was covering over on the light of Hashem, on this deep connection that I could have had with Hashem. Or, in other words, this negative act that I'm doing. So that's why the forces of evil in Tanya, in general, are called the forces of khalipa, or the forces of the shell, the forces of the peel. So, in short, what we've done here is, we've said, instead of looking at every opportunity to say, is this good or is it evil? Which also gives us an opportunity to say, it's not so binary. What do you mean? There could be something that's not good and not evil, right? Watching a football game. It's not good, not evil. Again, in certain instances, I understand that there could be certain times that watching a football game could be terribly evil. If somebody's dying in the other room and you could resuscitate them, obviously it's evil. But we're talking about a simple situation.
Permitted,
but
not necessary.
What we've done here is, and this word unnecessary is very, very important. What we've done here is we flipped the burden of proof. Instead of it being, I'm allowed to do anything in this world, unless it's something terrible, unless it's bad, unless it's hurting someone else, unless it's doing something negative in the world, we said the opposite. You are a Jew. You're put here in this world to connect with Hashem, to make this world an amazing place for Hashem, to make this world a home for God, right? Tikkun olam, to fix the world, to correct the world, whatever words you want to use. All right. Here's the burden of proof. Every single thing you do, you hold a glass of wine, you hold a box of tissues, you hold a pen. I don't care what it is, you hold it in your hand. Here's the question. Whatever I'm going to do with this, is that going to further the mission? Is that going to connect me to Hashem? Is that in some way going to do that? And by the way, it doesn't need to be directly. It doesn't need to be like putting on tefillin where you're literally praying to Hashem. It could be, like we gave the example of, going for a run. Going for a run is not a terrible thing, right? If you're running, right? So here's the question. Is that running, is that exercise, is that glass of wine, is that box of tissues, the pen, is it going to be used right now in order to further the connection with Hashem? Is it going to be used like a khalipa that's going to cover over on Hashem? Or is it going to be used in a way where we're going to use it and channel it to actually protect and enhance our mission, our job in this world? And look at the words the Alter Rebbe uses. Where are we holding here? David, go for it. Text 8a. Oh, I'm sorry. I flipped the page in my book. I didn't flip the page online here. There you go. Text 8a. Can you read for us? Oh, we tried you before. What happened?
Yes. No, I got it now, but, there. Okay, wait a minute. There it is.
Go ahead.
Does it start with the khalipa?
Yeah.
Khalipa, it includes any deeds under the sun that are all vanity and an affliction of the spirit. Similarly, any word or thought that is not directed to God and to his will and to his service. For this is the meaning of the term sitra akra, literally the other side. Example, not on the sides of holiness. The sides of holiness is nothing but the indwelling and extension of God's holiness. Now God dwells only on that which is surrendered to him. Anything, however, that does not surrender itself to God, but considers itself as if it is a separate thing unto...
Hold on, let me flip the page for you. A separate thing unto, where were we? Here we go, unto itself. You got it? You with us, David?
Got it. Does not receive life from the inner core of the holy emanating life force, but from its hind part, so to speak. So greatly diminished does the light and life force become diminution that it is able to become contracted and vested in a state of exile within that seemingly independent entity, giving its vitality and existence, giving its life and causing it to exist.
So, thank you, David. So when I watch a football game or when I indulge in something which is not negative, not harming anyone, it turns out that what I'm essentially doing, I'm tapping into the forces, which the Alter Rebbe calls, it comes from the hind part. That's a whole conversation we could talk about in and of itself. But it's coming from the khalipa. These forces, this energy is coming, it's being fueled by something which is covering over on Hashem. So this is all fine and dandy, but does that mean that we're equating murder, which is something terrible and literally rips a life from this world, with watching a football game? Because both of them, inherently don't connect us to Hashem? Is that what we're doing? We're saying those two are exactly the same? Certainly not. You'll have noticed, for those with the minds, like the analytical minds, will have noticed that the Alter Rebbe gave us two analogies. One analogy was of peel on a fruit. The other one was an analogy of shell over nuts. Now, certainly the skin of a grape cannot be compared to the the hard shell of a walnut, right? So the Alter Rebbe points out that there are two different levels, two different categories of things in this world, even though they both get their energy from khalipa. Yes, they do both proclaim, I am something of myself and I'm not connecting to God, right? I'm something other than God. I'm doing something which is not part of the pale of God's plan, right? But they are divided into two categories. Marguerite, you want to read for us a little bit? Marguerite?
What?
You want to read for us a little bit? Or?
Now the kelipot are divided into two categories, one lower than the other. The lower category consists of 3 completely unclean and evil kelipot, containing no good whatsoever. From them come the souls of all unkosher, forbidden animals, and the sustaining force of the bodies, as well as the existence and life force of all forbidden vegetation, such as orla, the first 3 years, fruit of tree, and the kilaim, the mixture of grain seeds in vineyard, and so forth. Similarly, the existence and life force of any act, utterance, or thought in violation of any of the 365 biblical prohibitions and their rabbinic offshoots.
Okay, continue up here. Go ahead. However,
there exists a different sort of kelipa that animates the souls of kosher animals, beasts, birds, and fish, whose consumption is permissible, as well as the existence and life force of any vegetation or inanimate matter that is permissible for consumption. This lesser category of kelipa also animates the existence and vitality of all acts, utterance, and thoughts in mundane matters that are in no way forbidden, but are not performed for the sake of heaven as they ought to be. To utilize the body as an instrument in the service of God. All these are derived from the second type of kelipa and sitra ara, which is the fourth kelipa, called kelipa noga, kelipa that shines. Wow.
Thank you, Marguerite. So my friends, this is the difference between murder and a football game. You see, there are 365 prohibitions in the Torah, right? You cannot say, look, here's I have my prism, and does this connect me to Hashem or it doesn't connect me to Hashem? So therefore, I'm going to choose to eat some pork rind or whatever it is, and use that energy to serve Hashem. And I'm going to figure out how to channel the energy of the pig into serving Hashem, heaven forbid, right? Or I'm gonna whatever, desecrate Shabbos, but it's going to be in a way that's going to serve Hashem. We don't get that opportunity. That Hashem tells us that comes from the 3 negative klipas, right? The same thing for murder, right? I can't say I'm allowed to murder in order to X, Y, Z, right? It doesn't work that way. Football games and really everything else, notice how he mentioned kosher animals, kosher fish, all these sorts of fruits and vegetables, all these things, they don't take their source in holiness. Peppers are not a holy. Peppers are klipas noga. They are a shell, but that shell shines forth. Think about it like the skin of a grape. You look through the skin of the grape, you can see the grape coming through. It's not a shell of a walnut that says, no, there's no flesh here, there's no fruit here. No. It doesn't do that. It doesn't say, I am everything, and you should it just says, I'm here, and I'm covering over the fruit. What are you going to choose to do with me? Are you going to choose to utilize me as a way, as a mechanism to serve Hashem, or heaven forbid the opposite, right? Are you going to use that football game to do something terrible, whatever it is, right? Or eat something in a terrible way, right? And use that energy you get from the food in a terrible way. Or will you do it in a holy way, right? We can eat right now. We're drinking wine, I would say, in a pretty holy way. We're drinking wine. It's helping us to loosen our brain to be able to understand Torah. Great, that's amazing. Using wine for Kiddush, even holier, right? But using wine, as we know it can be used, can obviously be. So this wine is not holy, is what we'll call unnecessary. But more importantly, it has to be put into that prism. Which way am I going to take it? Towards Hashem or towards the opposite? So that's klipas noga, the klipa that shines. Interesting. Let's let the Alter Rebbe finish, and then we'll recap what's going on here. Phil, you want to read for us a little bit?
Okay.
So we're going to
do. I have
text 9.
9.
This latter category. I don't know. Looks like too many tech problems. Rob, Shimon, you want to read for us a little bit?
Okay, hold on one second.
This latter category here.
Yeah, hold on one second.
Go for it.
All right. This, let's see, this latter category of khalipa is an intermediary between 3 completely unique impure kelipot in the realm of holiness. Therefore, it is sometimes becomes included in the 3 impure kelipot, and sometimes is elevated, induced into a holy space. This occurs when the good mixed into the kelipot, nagah, is extracted from evil and rises above to become included in holiness. For example, when one eats fatty beef and drinks spiced wine, not for personal pleasure, to open the mind, the service of God, and study Torah, Rabbah says wine and fragrance makes the mind more something.
Hold on. Go ahead. More receptive. You see it?
No, I don't. Hold on a second.
At the top here, more receptive.
I'm in, my video has stopped.
Page
So,
33. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'll finish off here. So
yeah.
he says that.
Well, I just wanted to make one comment.
One second.
In Tanya, they discuss the fact that when the Eight Sahara asks you to do something bad, it's good because it asks you to make a choice. And only humans have an ability to make a choice. It's when you don't make the choice.
You're jumping the gun. We're getting to that. Let's finish reading what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. So he brought an example that Rava said, wine and fragrance make my mind more receptive. Likewise, when one eats meat and drinks wine to fulfill his obligation to enjoy the Shabbat and festival, same thing, right? In these instances, the life force of the meat and wine, which flows from klipat noga, right? It comes from that bright klipa, is extracted and elevated to God like an offering. A similar thing happens when one uses humor to sharpen the mind and gladden the heart for divine service and Torah study, which require joy. Rava would do this by making humorous remarks to his students before they would study, bringing them to good cheer and thus making them more receptive to the subsequent lesson. By contrast, one who eats meat gluttonously and imbibes wine to satisfy the desires of the body and the animal soul causes the life force of the meat and wine he ingested to be temporarily absorbed within the complete evil of the 3 impure kelipot. This is powerful. This is powerful. So like Rob was mentioning, you jumped the gun there, Rob, but I'll repeat what you were saying. What you were mentioning about the freedom of choice that a human being has becomes so much more powerful when we recognize what's going on over here. Our definition of good and bad has now been completely redefined. Good means connected to Hashem. Bad means obviously disconnected from Hashem. But much more importantly, here's one way of looking at it. You know the word kosher, right? Another word for kosher is mutar or asur, okay, which means prohibited or permissible. right? When it comes to food, you say it's either permissible or prohibited. The word asur in Hebrew means to be bound up, to be tied up, like somebody who's in prison and is tied up, chained up. Mutar means to be let free. So now think of this analogy that we've just gotten, which is so powerful. You have this energy, the energy of the meat and the wine, and it's here and it's powerful and it's right there for the taking. And like Shimon was sharing with us, like Rob Strubel was sharing with us, what you have, that ability that you have as a human being to choose what you do with that meat or wine, what you're going to do with that energy, actually allows you either to schlep that meat and wine down to the 3 impure kalipas and get it and literally imprison it within those 3 impure kalipas, or to set it free, to connect to Hashem, to allow it, right? By making it kosher, by making it good, by doing the proper thing with that thing, we literally allow it to fly up to Hashem. Wow. And that is the deeper meaning of every time we use something that's quote unquote neutral, right? For those of you that were involved in the Facebook conversation, humor, right? We see in this world, and there were actually examples brought from people's personal lives, for those that were looking at the Facebook feed, where people were discussing humor used to the best, amazing, most amazing things, right? Laughter is the best medicine. It helped me overcome sickness. It helped me with all sorts of things. And we see Rabbi using it even before they were going to study Torah. He would tell a joke. He would say something lighthearted in order to open their mind. But humor can be used terribly when we tell a joke at someone's expense, when we use humor to allow our ego to rise up and to overpower someone else's existence. There were examples brought to us of people that were bullied as a child, in a humorous way. It was all quote unquote a joke. So humor is not holy or unholy. Humor is powerful. And the question is, which direction are we, with our freedom of choice, going to take it? Okay, so now back to the football game. Alan, does it still seem like the football game has no hope? What do you think?
I think the football game is it's kind of not doing too well right now.
Not doing so well right now. Okay,
yeah.
But here's the deal. Like Marilyn said, it's all going to come down to perspective. In fact, Marilyn, you want to read for us? Are you available to read for us?
Sure.
That's the text we're holding now.
Okay.
We're holding
This
text.
latter category.
No. We just did that. 1 second.
Okay. Text 10.
Oh, text 10. I actually said text 10 outside by mistake. I thought we had read it already. So text 11. Go ahead.
Text 11.
So what is our approach when it comes to something that's allowed, something that we're perfectly allowed to do, right? But it's not, there's no particular, what is our approach? Go ahead.
The permissible, when done for one's pleasure, is completely evil. As the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, chapter 7, where we are commanded, sanctify yourself with what is permitted to you. One must introduce sanctity into the matters that are permissible, so that they serve the purpose of enhancing one's Torah, mitzvot, fear of God, and good character traits.
So we now have a big responsibility. Now that we've established that we have this tremendous freedom of choice, every time we encounter such a powerful energy, we have a freedom of choice, whether we tie it down into the forces of khalipa or of negativity, or we set it free to connect to Hashem. So now every time we come across something that's permissible, we have that choice. What is this week's Torah portion? Tell us in text 11. We just quoted it. Kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach. Make yourself holy because I am holy, says Hashem. With what? Specifically with the things that are permissible, right? The bare minimum is to do the mitzvahs, but really, truly making this world a better place is to take something that's not a mitzvah necessarily, and use it in a way that enhances the world, that makes the world a better place. You know why? Because that's the whole purpose of this world. The whole purpose of this world is to make a home for Hashem, right? To make this world a better place, to make this world a place where Hashem, thrives. What is a true abode? What is a true home? Think of not even just your home, which is certainly a reflection of who you are, but think of a home that belongs, let's say, to a king, a real, dictator from back in the day, right? His palace, which is tailor-made to his wills, right, to his desires, his every beck and call, would be a reflection of who he is. In every corner, you would see colors that are his favorite color. On every doorknob, there would be his coat of arms, right? Even the entire style which it follows would follow the way his brain thinks, the way his emotions go, because he chooses it based on him. I'm not talking about somebody that has an interior designer do it for them. You know, I'm talking about somebody who actually, their palace would be a reflection of them. This world is meant to be Hashem's palace. Shlomo, you want to read for us? Text 12. Hold on, you're still muted. You have to unmute your camera. There you
Okay,
go.
text 12. There is a unique advantage to sanctifying oneself with what is permitted, relative to the general notion of fulfilling the Torah and mitzvot. Religious devotion, as it is expressed by refraining from what's allowed, uniquely invokes the essence of divinity, which transcends the degree of divinity invoked by the generic form of divine service. Thus, sanctifying oneself with what is permitted plays an acute role in completing the home for God in this world, in so much as it creates a home for the divine essence. Similarly to a human home, where a person is able to be fully expressed. Similarly, the ultimate abode for God in this world is such that the entire world and everything that is in it becomes home to God's essence. This is accomplished when our divine service is not performed only with matters of.
Hold on.
Torah, only
mitzvot at the top here.
Only in matters of Torah and mitzvahs, but rather extends even to our mundane lives by sanctifying what is permitted to us.
So this is crucial. This is crucial. Look, nobody's going to beat up on mitzvot here. Mitzvot are very, very important. We should certainly connect to Hashem by doing a mitzvah. It's very powerful. But let's talk about what's so unique when beyond the mitzvah, also when you have a glass of wine, also when you watch a football game, you choose to elevate that and to set that free and to let that energy connect to Hashem. What's so powerful about that? What's so powerful is that you're allowing God into the entirety of the world, not just into certain elements, but into the entirety of the world. What do I mean by that? And this is where the freedom of will, the choice that we have to do this, comes in so powerfully. Remember that palace of the king that is an exact reflection of his desires, exactly how he would want it? Imagine if I told you that king hates red. He hates the color red. So presumably, if you go through the entire palace, you wouldn't find the color red anywhere. All right, fine. Now, further imagine that one of the employees decided he liked the color red. So he says, look, the whole king's palace is going to be devoid of, completely lacking the color. Nowhere. You won't find the color red anywhere. But there's one little room. It's going to be for me. It's going to be the room where I sleep. I'm going to put red there, right? If the king comes into that room and he all of a sudden feels extremely uncomfortable because this is the exact opposite of his, not just his personality, but his will and who he is, it would be a tremendous affront to the king. Now, I don't understand why. There's 1,000 other rooms in the palace. Can't you go hang out somewhere else? Yes, but this is my palace. And if I'm going to be here the way I want to be, if this is going to be my home, then I don't want that corner to be that way. Think about the palace as our lives for Hashem. Yes, it's amazing when we shake the lulav for Hashem. It's amazing that we're good to other people. It's amazing that we put on tefillin, that we light Shabbos candles, whatever. But Hashem says, when you make that statement, that there's not a single part of your life that you don't look at through that prism, how can I use this to connect to Hashem? When you make that statement, that to me is the most powerful thing in the world. Why? Because you've allowed me to come with my essence. You've allowed me to come with my entirety. You've allowed your whole life to be an abode for me. And collectively, the entire world, right? There isn't even an ayora, there isn't even a section of life that's not filled with Hashem, with godliness. And that is a very powerful statement.
Can I say something, Zushi?
Absolutely.
So the other way to see this is Hashem loves us so tremendously that he created us. And all he's saying is, I've got a whole palace of wonderful things for you. All you have to do is try to do the right thing and to be holy like me. And it's better than watching the football game. There's something I have something better for you. And if I have faith that Hashem has something better for me, that's when I'll want to try.
Every time I watch the football game, Hashem doesn't want me to watch it. Then why didn't Hashem deny me that ability? Why didn't he tell me you're not allowed to watch the football game?
Well, it's sort of like my mother used to say, I can't make you want to love me. So Hashem wants us to love him and to try to do the things he would be happy with without our saying so.
Yes, but Rob, that's true. That's true even with regards to a prohibition. Even with regards to not keeping Shabbos. Hashem tells us keep Shabbos. When it comes to not keeping Shabbos, we still have the choice to do that. He can't force us to do that. I mean, he could, but it would defeat the purpose of the whole freedom of choice, which we spoke about. Why does he give us certain things, which it's not just about our freedom of choice, but way more than that? He actually actively tells us you're allowed to. You're allowed to. There's nothing wrong with watching a football game. He tells us that clearly in the Torah. You're following every single thing in the Torah. Why would he give us that? Why would he tell us that? Why wouldn't he give us direction with regards to that? That's where this point here comes in. He wants to give us this other choice, this other very valuable choice, this powerful choice that we can make, which is to use this moment for myself, or to allow God even into that moment of the life, into that moment of my life. It's like when you're a teacher in school, you always get super excited when you see a child. Like I used to teach third grade, many of you know. When I used to teach third grade, I would always try to like reward kids, and they eventually caught on, that if I catch you during recess, during your time, which is a break for you, and it is a break for you, but if I catch you during that time choosing to study, that's amazing. That's great. You're even choosing from your own time. I would never make that time mandatory to study. But when you do that, it gives me tremendous nachas. It says, Hashem, even that last iota of your life, which I left for you, you're choosing to let me in there. That's powerful. That's powerful. Julie, you want to bring us home here? We're the last text of tonight's lesson, text 13. And just to set the stage before you start reading, the Rebbe reminds us that this is actually not just the purpose of the world, but this is exactly what it means for Mashiach to come. You see, because Mashiach, what is the line? The line. If you use one line of Mashiach, what is the time of Mashiach? It's a time of no war. It's a time of no peace. Yeah, those are all true things. But what is Mashiach? So the line, the quote that Maimonides uses for this is, he says, the world will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem as water covers the sea. That is the definition of Mashiach. As a symptom of that, as a byproduct of that, obviously there won't be war. If Hashem's glory, if Hashem's revealed essence will be everywhere, there will never be a challenge between good and evil. That's why there's no challenges. That's why there's no sickness, right? No sickness and no sick people. Those that are sick are cured. That's why there's no death, etc. These are all these things that we're told about Mashiach are all symptoms of the one point, which is when Mashiach comes, this mission which we've been working for, which is to have the revelation of godliness in the entire world, will be a reality, right? So how does this tie into what we were just talking about? Go ahead, Julie. The uniqueness.
The uniqueness of the future redemption is that then the essence of who God is will be revealed, a dimension far superior to the God who relates to the world we know of. As is well documented, Mashiach...
Hold on, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. The world's very purpose, to create a home.
Complete, the world's very purpose, to create a home for the divine.
Right, and let's finish off up here. Sorry, I'll zoom in for you.
Thank you. In the mundane, when we say home, we mean a home for the very essence. Think about it in terms of a human house. It is the place where a person can truly be expressed, not just certain qualities, rather all of them. The same is true for the home we are trying to create for God. It ought to be a home for all of God, his essence. It is possible that a person studies Torah and fulfills mitzvot, yet they retain their identity, the sense of self. The thing is that when it comes to religious duties, they suppress that sense of self and sacrifice it to God. In such a paradigm, God has only reached the outer ring of their soul. However, when a person refrains from permissible matters and they abstain from their own personal matters, Then the terms have changed. They no longer have a personal corner. Rather, they have abandoned all sense of self, for God has touched the very core of their soul. When a person completely abandons their personal matters, everyday activity is an act of God. The person becomes a godly asset in the sense that their entire sense of self is godly.
This is look. There is nothing wrong with saying there's a little corner of my life that's for me. But there's nothing more powerful. There's nothing greater in the connection you can have with Hashem when you say, even that little corner that I left for me, it's truly about you, Hashem. Now, this is inherently true. We know that, right? We were created, and that is the way we are, even without any choice. But Hashem gives us the choice to deny that. He says, look, if you can give me that corner, that there's no, it's not like there's Hashem in all of my life, besides for in this one little aspect of my life. No. I say to Hashem, even in that little aspect of my life, I want Hashem's light to shine. I want you to be there, and I want you to uplift me, and I want you to even in that, I want you to live like a person lives in their house, even in that little corner, the corner that I left for myself. For those of you that attend the Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of Our Fathers class, the To Be a Mensch class that we do every Monday, will be familiar that this past Monday we spoke about this. Sorry, every Sunday. This past Sunday we spoke about this. We quoted the Mishnah as saying, "Aseh ritzono." The exact words are failing me. Do his will or make his will like your will, in order that he should make his will your will. In other words, make your desires his desire. I want to drink wine now. I'm going to figure out a way that I should be drinking wine in the way that Hashem wants me to drink wine. And then the Mishnah finishes off with a much more powerful point, which is nullify your will, submit your will before his will. Ask any spouse, they'll tell you that this is the most powerful thing you could ever have. When a spouse can tell you, yes, I wanted to go do X, Y, and Z, but I put that aside for you because I love you. And because I wanted you to have what you want, so I nullified my will, I submitted my will, I put that aside in order to do what you want. Hashem says, those little corners of your life that you kind of left for yourself, you're allowed to leave them for yourself. But if you let me into them, that shows your love for me. That shows the powerful place that I take in your life, that everything is for me. Everything is for Hashem. So folks, in conclusion, we're not saying here that every time you sit down to watch a football game, your first initial reaction will be, oh my God, Rabbi Zushi said, we shouldn't be watching football games. You know what we should be doing? I don't know. I should go put on tefillin. I should go help someone else. I should go utilize something better with my life. Hashem doesn't want that. Hashem doesn't need you right now to go do that. There are moments in your life when you do that. Certainly you should do it as much as possible. But if right now you're watching football, here's the question. Put on those glasses. Filter everything through that prism. How can I make this football game? How can I make this moment holy? How can I infuse this moment with Hashem as well? Not just my tefillin, not just my Shabbos, not just my helping someone else, me taking a homeless man out to dinner. Even my drinking a glass of wine on myself, which I'm doing for myself. Myself is Hashem's self. There's no such thing as me, just me, outside of Hashem. No. It's Hashem. Because that's the truth. Let's just figure out how to tap into that. And I wish I'd be able to give you a guide to your entire life how to do that. But of course, we don't know how to do that. That would defeat the whole challenge.
Okay, Zushi, can I ask?
Let's figure out how to connect it to Hashem. Yes.
May I ask then? So was the asceticism of the Vilna Gaon a desirable state? Because at one point, I remember he received a visitor from one of the revered Rabbonim to say, you have immersed yourself, you sit there with your feet in iced water so that you should remain awake through all the hours of the day possible, and your family don't know you anymore. So he really adopted a very ascetic lifestyle to achieve what sounds very much as if I just wanted to just throw that open. And
absolutely. So if your question is, if Hasidus is opposed to asceticism, the answer is absolutely yes. This does not mean that Hasidus believes that we should walk around indulging ourselves. No, the opposite of asceticism doesn't have to, or the opposite of asceticism obviously is hedonism, right? The opposite of abstinence is obviously indulgence. But there's a middle ground, or not just a middle ground, there's a moment in your life where you're not indulging. You're not indulging. But instead of choosing to break that moment and to say, every time I have that, I instead do something to utilize that to serve Hashem. Now, certainly that's not...
So in that case, if I might just interject here. So is it really that no matter what the action is, putting asceticism to one side, that it's really about motivation, what the motivation is that brings you to a certain action? Because if you're motivated through a holy deed,
I want to
then...
say yes. I want to say yes, but I definitely want to qualify that. I want to first of all make the exception of the 365 things which the Torah does not allow. There are certain things in the Torah which are not allowed. You can't say, oh, it's all about motivation. I'm going to eat pig or I'm going to murder someone, but it's going to be with a good motivation. Right? Pardon my always using. I always try to use, whenever I talk about transgressions, I try to use an example of ritual transgression and an example of moral transgression, but they're equal in the Torah. You can't say I'm going to do that, but it's all about my motivation. So I'm going to motivate myself to do it in a proper way that it's going to serve Hashem. You can't do that. Also,
it would have been more accurate for me.
It
would have been more accurate for me to phrase the question as, even if I'm doing something that's permissible, but I do it with the wrong motivation.
Absolutely, exactly. That's precisely the lesson we're learning today. That when we do something permissible but unnecessary, but we do it with a motivation of this is for me, that's your own ego pushing away Hashem. I don't mean to use such strong words. I'm sure we never mean to push Hashem out of our lives. But when you boil it down to it, that's what's going on. We're saying, this is my moment, and this is not Hashem's moment. This is my aspect of life, and it's the part where I don't like to think about Hashem. So, l'chaim. It is precisely this effort. When we choose those moments, we give them up for Hashem, we allow Hashem into every aspect of our lives, not just the holy ones, that brings about Mashiach. Because that's when Hashem said, oh wow, you're really allowing me into your whole life? You're really allowing me into the whole world? Now I'm ready to come down into the world and to really fill the world. Like the pasuk says about Mashiach, that the world, the Rambam, Maimonides says about Mashiach, that the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, like water covers the sea. L'chaim.
L'chaim.